If you've ever said we're interested in adoption, but we don't know where to start, this episode is for you. Welcome to Let's Talk Adoption. I'm Kim and I'm here with Heather, and we're excited to talk with you in this episode all about, Adoption 101, the basics.
And really, we're focusing on people who want to adopt, who want to bring a child into their home and their family. And today we're going to break down adoption into simple, manageable steps. We're not going to get into the jargon, the pressure, the details. We're just going to kind of clarify um, to help you get started, help you take that step because, this is January. A lot of adoptive parents get started in January. They may have waited till after the holidays, waited till after things calm down. Little known fact, adoption agencies actually get extra busy in January. So we thought it'd be a great time just to kind of talk about these things, break it down to help give you some clarity if this fits you, if you're exploring adopting a child.
And kudos to you for taking this step earlier in the year and really wanting to learn more about the basics so that you have a good foundation as you map out your next steps. And a really good
Mhm.
agency is going to help you with mapping out those next steps. So
Right.
we really want to give you those basics to understand, like an overview. This is basically an overview. We're not going to go super deep. You can find that in other episodes. But Heather, what is something that families can start off by? Like, what's one of the first things that they need to do before they take an actual physical step toward adopting?
I think probably the best and first step is to really identify the type of child you're hoping to adopt or the type of adoption you're looking for, because really that's going to be your kind of your jumping off point. Now, for couples who are who have been through fertility treatments, maybe they already have a diagnosis, they know pregnancy is not going to be an option. Those are the couples that we really see desiring a newborn adoption. And that's fine. There's a lot of myths out there, things like there's no babies available. I can tell you from experience that is not true. We we help with newborn adoption all the time. So newborn adoption is realistic, and that is, like I say, for couples like that, that's usually one of the first decisions they have to make. For other families who are going into adoption more to help a child who needs a family, that's where we see choices toward either an international adoption or adopting a waiting child from foster care, which those are two awesome paths too. It really kind of boils down to that that motivation. Are you equipped and waiting to help a child in need of a home, or are you truly hoping to grow your family with a baby? Neither answer is right or wrong. They're just two different, really, paths to adoption.
Right. And so you're identifying, well, why am I adopting? What's
Hmm.
driving me here? And which type of adoption helps meet that why for me, as well as what am I looking for? What type of adoption? What what are the characteristics my child would have that I am, seeking that I would be able to say yes to in an adoption? Newborn, older, that is the age of the child is one
Hmm.
example of the preferences that you will determine as adoptive parents when you start to pursue adoption. You need to
Hmm.
know what your adoption preferences are. And Heather, the word preferences,
It
right? Like,
is.
do I prefer this? Do I prefer that?
Yeah,
How would you explain that? Because preferences is something that families set in adoption, and it's kind of there's like a specific meaning to that word
there is.
preferences.
There is. And I think probably criteria might be a little better word, but we often use the word preferences, and it really comes down to the the your preferences in a child. What races are you open to? And it doesn't have anything to do with I prefer this over that. It really has to do with what you are prepared um, to parent, who you are prepared to parent. Um, and racial background is one of those things, and there's a wide variety. Age is another preference. Newborn, 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. There's all the ages. So really looking at age is also an adoption preference. Prenatal substance exposure, especially if you are looking to adopt a baby, that is a preference that families can set. Are you open to a baby who may have been exposed to cigarettes, to marijuana, to alcohol, drugs, those types of things? Those play into adoption preferences. And then if you are looking to adopt an older child, certainly, any diagnoses will play a role. There are children waiting to be adopted with medical needs. There are some that have more psychological or trauma-based needs. Those are things to learn about and to know and understand and equip yourself so you know what you are best prepared or what you can become best prepared to adopt. And then um, open and closed adoption. We've talked a lot, Kim, in past episodes about closed adoption, open adoption. Um, for newborn adoption or private domestic adoption, open adoption really is the norm. If you're looking for more of a closed adoption, that's where your international and waiting children through the foster system will come into play. But I encourage you before you um, make that decision, because I'll be real upfront, most adoptive parents or most prospective adoptive parents coming into adoption, they are a little fearful about open adoption, but it is something that you really need to take the time and learn about, because even in foster adoption, adopting waiting children through the foster system, open adoption is becoming more prevalent because we're learning more about the importance of that in children today. So, if that kind of scares you a little bit, look at some of our past episodes, or we'll try to do some more in the future to really help dispel some more of those myths so that you can make the decision about open adoption not from a place of fear, but from a place of factual information. In fact, I think we did a whole episode not too long ago on the studies that show that open adoption is in the best interest of a child. That's a really great one to go back to because it really went through that. But those are the adoption preferences families need to really be able to set as they're doing this. And I know, Kim, that budget is another one that comes into play when families are evaluating their adoption path.
That's right. And, the budget is going to definitely dictate who is in your scope of possible partners for you. Adopting through the foster system is little to no cost. International adoption, now, I would say stereotypically, it is seen as the most expensive path to adopting, not only because of just the services that you're going to need from your agency here in the U.S., but also the travel, the translators you need to hire, the cost for the agency in country where your child is living and from. So, international adoption has kind of traditionally been seen as the more expensive path. And then private domestic adoption, which is adopting a baby in the US where a birth mom is choosing adoption for her child, is sort of middle of the road. And there are lots of statistics online as to the average cost of adoption. Um, there is a myth out there that says every family has to be wealthy in order to adopt a baby or internationally adopt. That's not necessarily true. Even though the cost is typically more than families expect in order to provide, the right services for yourself, the child, and the birth mother, there is a lot of guidance on how to fund adoption. There are tax credits and things, and we talk a lot and mention these in our podcast episodes as well. But, you can talk with your adoption professional and see what services they provide. I know that there are adoption funding coaches, and there are different methods for applying for grants and doing fundraising and planning for how you're going to best situate yourself to receive the federal adoption tax credit. I'm mentioning these things, we're not going deep into these, but just know that there is assistance and guidance out there. And then, of course, pulling from personal savings or being open to financing with the tax credit in mind are are all ways that families fund adoption. So certainly starting to identify what your adoption fund is, or opening your mind to the fact that there is a cost financially in adoption, and being willing to create a plan and follow that plan so you can be in the best financial position to say yes when your adoption
Hmm.
opportunity comes your way. So we're talking about preferences right now. And Heather, I know we talk about this a lot, that the more specific you are with your adoption preferences, it becomes more of a hindrance.
Hmm.
Whereas,
Hmm.
the more open your preferences are, then more adoption opportunities can fit within to what you would say yes to in your
Hmm. And
adoption.
yes, and the reason I wanted to bring up budget is because there is one preference that does fall under the budget category, and that is your specific budget if you're doing domestic newborn adoption for pregnancy-related expenses. Most expectant moms in the U.S. are covered by Medicaid for their deliveries, but there are often needs that are pregnancy related, that are financial in nature.
Hmm.
And most
Yeah.
states do allow women to receive help with this. And that is one preference that families can set also, is your budget to help with those pregnancy related expenses. And they can be things like rent, food, maternity clothes, transportation to doctor's appointments. Really a wide variety of needs a mother has while carrying a baby to term. So
Hmm.
again, just keep that in mind. And we don't we don't talk about preferences for any reason when we're talking to prospective adoptive parents, except to help understand specifically what type of child, what the child they're looking for is going to be, so that they can better be presented to adoption opportunities that fit, that match what they will be approved for in their home study.
Right. And so I think that's something to explain and kind of just like bring to light for adoptive parents who are brand new. This is Adoption 101.
Hmm.
And so sometimes there's an expectation that you're going to choose the child you'll be adopting. If you're adopting in the U.S. privately, you're waiting for a birth mom to choose you. That is basically the way things are done. But
Hmm.
that doesn't mean you're waiting for someone to choose you and you have to say yes no matter what. It means that your agency should be giving you adoption opportunities that fit within what you've decided for these
Hmm.
preferences, that you've thought about, talked about, researched, prayed about, and come to a really solid peace in discerning you could say yes to this child within these specific categories. Not every family is equipped for a special needs adoption. Not
Hmm.
every family is equipped to adopt any race. Not every family is equipped to adopt a sibling group of four. So these are things to think about, twins or just a single baby. These are preferences to start thinking about. And this is something that your adoption professionals should start communicating with you about early on. I know, Heather, we really value identifying a
Hmm.
family's needs and helping them become educated so that they're not hindering themselves, but they're not just wide open with the chance that they're going to say no to a birth mom when she
Hmm.
chooses them. So you should receive some guidance on this. You're not on your own, but preferences are a big part of establishing your foundation in adoption. And that also leads us to our next segment here in the podcast is, researching adoption agencies and choosing an adoption agency. You need to know what your needs are to know who's going to be able to meet those needs for you.
Right.
So, you know, that's really important. And so that's a good reason why you're listening to this episode today is that now you know, hey, I need to select certain things in my adoption so that when I research an agency, I can say, hey, how often do you see cases that fit within what I'm open to?
Hmm.
Or is what I'm seeking the rare exception for you and maybe we're not the best suited to work together?
Hmm. Hmm. And that really is looking for an adoption agency that is a good fit. I know for the families that I talk to, many of them find us at Lifetime Adoption because they're looking for a Christian organization, and that's a great fit. But there's more to that too. It has to be a broader fit in terms of your preferences. It has to be a fit in terms of your personality, and understanding how, or I shouldn't say understanding, taking the opportunity to learn how an agency works. And does that work for you too? For instance, first you're going to need an agency that does the type of adoption you are looking for. I mean, that's kind of baseline, that's given. You want someone whose values align with yours. Obviously, their fees need to fit into your budget. And then, the things you may not know is you're going to need someone who will walk with you through the adoption, who provides the education you need. So during this time, you're growing in understanding, you're growing in capacity, because I will tell you right off the bat, people do not come to adoption ready to be adoptive parents. There is often a learning that needs to take place. And it's important that your agency provide those learning opportunities and that guidance for you. Because while yes, it is a path to parenthood, it it looks different than growing a pregnancy and becoming a mom. There's another layer of adoptive parenting that goes into it. And I don't say that to scare you. It's really more to educate and prepare you. So
Hmm.
so these are things that are kind of the initial. And then as you go a little deeper, you start getting to know the agency. And often you do get to know them by starting to have conversations with them, filling out their application or their inquiry form, really to start learning more and seeing, does this feel like a good fit? Do people, these people at the agency, do they seem to match what I'm looking for in terms of guidance, support, education, growth, and the adoption process?
Right. I think having those conversations is very helpful because that gives you that moment where you can ask a question and see how, they value the fact that you have a
Hmm.
question and that you are engaging and how they may answer that. And, how do you feel about the way that they're responding to you? Does it feel rushed? Does it feel like they're talking down to you? Does it feel like, they just want to rush you on to the next step.
Hmm.
Rushed meaning like, hey, you just need to pay, pay, pay. That feels transactional, right?
Hmm.
So, I know families that we value working with in a partnership, we're valuing more of a relationship, more of a cooperative partnership. So we're also observing, hey, do they seem like people that could really follow the steps? Are they asking questions that show that they value the same things that we value? And
Hmm.
all questions are good questions, but
Hmm.
just remember that this is going to be a partnership, and so that communication, how quickly they respond to you, and do they have the time to actually help you learn more, or do they just say, well, that's all on our website, you should know this already,
Hmm.
whatever it may be. I know personally, Heather, I love when families ask questions, even if we mention it 10 times in a video or on our website. Um, I love when they ask questions because that means they're seeking answers. There's something
Hmm.
they don't know and they're willing to ask for help. And that's just very important. And so when you are selecting an agency, you want someone that is going to be able to walk with you through what you need and guide you in the way that you need. Because think about also the other side of the coin when a birth mother calls in her moment of like panic, scared,
Hmm.
feeling isolated, feeling like she's the only one facing something like this, and feeling some shame and just feeling fear and anxiety. When she hops on the line with an adoption agency, how's she going to feel? Is there going to be good communication? Is there going to be respect? Is there going to be time to sit and speak with her? Is there going to be patience to answer her questions? So, whatever you are experiencing, just imagine how that may be mirrored with birth moms on the other side of the coin, where you might not ever be sitting in the room witnessing how an agency talks to a birth mom, but how they talk to you and how they talk and speak of a birth mom is very, I think, revealing. So
Hmm.
observe those things. And
Hmm.
remember that you are choosing an agency. They're not just only choosing you. You're going to be
Right.
walking through some moments, on the path to bringing your baby home that can be stressful when you are going to have questions, and there are going to be uncertainties and unknowns for everyone. but how are they going to be walking with you through that? And so you need to have a good connection and know that there's a partnership where there's, mutual respect there.
I want to take a moment to highlight our sponsor, the Lifetime Adoption Foundation, a nonprofit that's doing incredible work behind the scenes to support adoption in lasting, meaningful ways. Lifetime Adoption Foundation offers college scholarships for birth mothers, helping them take that next step in their future after making an incredibly selfless choice. The foundation also provides adoption education so that women and families have access to the information they need to make informed, thoughtful decisions. And through generous donations, they're able to provide grants to help with the placement of children who may face longer waits for adoption, which may include children who are older, part of a sibling group, or have medical needs. Be part of something that truly changes lives. Visit lifetimeadoptionfoundation.org to learn more or to make a tax-deductible contribution today. I think once you've chosen an agency or feel like you've chosen an agency enough to talk to them, to get to know them, I think the path forward becomes much clearer. Um, each agency has their own process, their own steps, their own progression that they should be able to clearly explain to you. Um, again, usually the first step is an application followed by a conversation to ensure that there is a mutual understanding, not just like Kim said, that you feel they fit, but also that they feel that what you're looking for fits within what they're seeing in their adoptions today. And typically once you're working together, that's when you begin with the home study process or referrals for the home study process. Um, Education, I mentioned the importance of adoption education, and that's when that should, well, honestly, adoption education should start before you're even working together. That's super important. But it should continue through your adoption wait. They should walk you through creating an adoption profile, something, again, we're talking about domestic newborn adoption, something that, expectant moms can see and choose you from. And they should really be that guide through the waiting time. And then once you are chosen by a birth mother, then everything kind of shifts gears and you're going into a time of matching when they should be your guide through that as well. And again, I'm kind of really staying high level here at, because as Kim said, we're at Adoption 101, but that's really what you're looking for through this. And I know that there may be other professionals you have talked to or maybe considering. I know there are adoption facilitators, adoption consultants, a wide variety, adoption coaches out there. We're talking about the adoption agency who is the one who is doing that work with the birth mother, who is speaking to you with experience from a birth mother. And to be honest, they are the ones who should be providing the services for the adoptive parents as well. And that's why it is so important to choose an adoption agency, because in doing so, you're also ensuring those same values, that same care, that same guidance is provided to the birth mother, not just now, immediate during the adoption, but it should continue post-placement and for her lifetime.
And Adoption 101, let's make sure that families understand the difference between home study and profile.
Yes.
Because in our minds, if we're new to adoption, it kind of seems like, well, it's all about us, right? Or a home study, do they just come to our house and just look around and then we're cleared? Is it like a 1 hour thing? So the home study process is around a couple months process, and that's where a licensed social worker in your state is going to make sure that you meet all your state's minimum requirements. They're going to guide you through when and how and where to do your background checks and do all your paperwork and everything. And since this is Adoption 101, I want you to know that the home study is very involved. It's pretty invasive, the conversations that you'll be expected to have, the topics of your history you'll be expected to talk about, and the answers that you'll be expected to give on the questionnaires that the social worker provides. And there is an order to completing the home study, so you're not on your own. Your social worker will guide you through that. If you're working with an agency, of course, they're going to tell you when you need to start your home study. Most agencies do not expect you to already have it just in order to apply with them. Most
Right.
agencies understand that when you apply, you're probably brand new to this, and that is
Hmm.
totally normal. They don't expect you to have this done. So that's the home study. It is for the eyes of your adoption professional. It is for when you go to finalize your adoption in front of a judge, they look at that home study. It is for when, you're in another state adopting a baby and you want to get clearance to legally bring that baby across state lines back to your home state. That interstate adoption office needs to look at your home study. So the home study is a document that you will put a lot of effort into and that your social worker will then write up and have all your supporting documents proving who you are and that you meet all your state's minimum requirements to be approved to adopt the type of child that you are adopting.
Hmm.
And then your profile is for birth mothers to see if you're in an agency where you'll be chosen by a birth mother. So the profile is something that your adoption agency should definitely guide you through or create for you. And it's going to share more like your personality, your lifestyle, your values, things that a birth mother wants to know about prospective adoptive parents so she can say, okay, perfect. That is the best family for my child. They have everything that I feel a child should have. So that's the difference. And usually, I know, Heather, we guide families to work on their home
Hmm.
study and profile at the same time. Why do a home study for 2 months, stop that, and then start a 2-month profile development process? Do them both at the same time and then be off and running. So
Absolutely.
those are two things that it's really important to just follow the exact instructions that your adoption professional is giving you.
Hmm.
Because, if you think you're doing everything you can for your home study, but you haven't done your background checks or haven't scheduled your physical, you're going to be missing important components that are vital for you to even receive a placement.
Hmm. And the same thing goes with your profile.
Hmm.
If you're being guided by your agency who actually works with expectant moms, hey, that guidance is invaluable. They're talking to women. They know what women are saying. They know what women are looking for. If you're working with someone who's a professional profile designer, hey, nothing negative about that. Just know that they probably aren't working with expectant moms. So, if you're getting that agency guidance, that's super valuable. Definitely follow that with your profile.
Right. And not every agency is going to be the same agency that does your home study. And not
Right,
every agency is going to have a full-fledged program for profile development. But these
right.
are just things we want you to know about that are
Hmm.
going to be expected of you as adoptive parents, especially adopting a baby in the U.S.
Right. And it's good to know, you don't have to do everything at once. Adoption is step by step, and a good agency will guide you step by step.
That's right. And Heather, I know this is Adoption 101, so why don't I just give a quick explanation as to like from where you are right now all the way to we have our child and there is no
Sure,
other paperwork we ever have to do.
sure.
So first, identify the agency, do the profile, do the home study. They already know your preferences. They're presenting you to birth moms that fit within your preferences and you get chosen. Once you're matched with a birth mom, that's when you need to retain legal services in an adoption like what we work with, because we work with adoptions nationwide at Lifetime. So, we want you to just retain legal services once you're matched. And then the attorney will then get the paperwork signed off with the birth parents and the clearance for the both states rights for the baby to travel across state lines. And then you come home with your baby and you meet with your social worker, again, your home study social worker. If your state requires post-placement visits, it's just a check-in with your social worker to make sure everyone's needs are being met and that you have the resources to best parent that child. So the social worker does maybe 1 or 2 post-placement visits and then recommends that your adoption be finalized. So then your attorney takes that and gets a court date for you when you finalize your adoption. Now, a lot of adoptive parents want to know, especially brand new to adoption, how long does a birth mom have to change her mind? And every state is different. Most states only give up to 30 days, if not 3 days, 10 days. It varies. There are different state laws, so you'll need to know what state the birth mom is in first, but generally within 30 days of the birth or placement, then that's how long a birth mom would have to change her mind. So that's all resolved before you ever do your finalization. Your finalization isn't waiting for the termination of parental rights. That's already taken care of. The finalization is just, okay, termination of parental rights is done. Post-placement visits are done. The court date rolled around where you fit into the schedule to be able to have your finalization court date. And now you're done. So
That's right.
hopefully that gives a nice, I know it seems simple. And when I've explained that to families, they say, you make it sound so easy. Well, the understanding of the process is very easy. Getting there is where you need the qualified adoption professional who truly cares about you and cares about the child you'll be adopting and where the child is coming from, especially coming from a birth mom, and is providing that support. And that's where adoptive parents, you're kind of a fish out of water. This is your first time, second or third, but you should work with an adoption professional that this is what they do every day, and they've literally done this thousands of times. So all you have to do is follow those steps to get through that process and know that, when you follow the recipe, you can expect to achieve the results you're looking for. That goes back to following the steps of your agency. Make sure you follow those steps. They're all laid out there for a reason. Most agencies haven't just been working in adoption for 6 months. Nowadays, agencies, it's customary that they've been assisting families and birth parents for decades, or
Hmm.
international adoption for decades, or the foster system has evolved over time. And if you don't understand why something is or it doesn't make sense, you're having trouble reconciling that in your mind, ask, where does that come from? It's okay to ask those questions. So again, like Heather said, you don't have to do this all at once, but I hope this certainly gives you a nice overview. Adoption 101. Keep coming back to our podcast and feel free to write to us. You can email us through our website at letstalkadoption.com and stay tuned for future episodes.